You're listening to the Basketball Lab podcast with your hosts, Mark Shannon, Mark Clark, and Marco Corona.
Hello, and welcome to the Basketball Lab podcast. I'm your host, Mark Shannon, and I'm joined by my co-host, Mark Clark and Marco Corona. But before we get started, if you enjoy our content and want to see more, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel by clicking the subscribe button below. Also, hit the bell for notifications for new video. Now back to our regularly scheduled program and jump into a new segment we like to call Top 5 Busts. We're going to give you our top 5 of the worst draft picks since 2010. And there's some horrendous ones on there.
Oh, yes, there have been.
All
Are
right.
we starting at number 5?
Yeah, we'll go. So Marco, we'll go. We'll each give our top 5 and who we have. So Marco, you go first.
All right. So at number 5, this is not biased, by the way, as a Tar Heels fan. I got Jahlil Okafor from Duke, who came in the draft in 2015, drafted number 3 by the Philadelphia 76ers. And the funny part about that is I was doing some digging and some research just to make sure I get my facts straight and not talk smack and be biased. Kristaps Porzingis was drafted actually number 4. So he came in that class. And Jahlil Okafor never turned out to be the player that everybody thought he was going to be. I think, honestly, in fairness to him, he was drafted in the wrong era. If you're talking about 10, 12, 15 years before that, center who can dominate in the middle, great. But he couldn't stretch the floor. He never turned out to be that guy. I think he had one good year where he averaged about 15 points. So my 5th bust of the 2010 onward was Jahlil Okafor.
So for my coming in number 5 for me, this is going to be a surprise and shock to you guys. But it's the bubble MVP, Stanley Johnson, who's currently with the Toronto Raptors. He was drafted number 8 in 2015 by Detroit Pistons, of course. With the Pistons, he was just averaging 7 points, 3.4 rebound per game during his time with the Pistons. And guess who was in the same draft class as Stanley Johnson?
Don't say it, man. Don't say it.
It's Mark's boy, Devin Booker, and also Cat. Karl Anthony Towns was in the same draft class as Stanley Johnson.
Yeah, but Cat was drafted first, right? So he doesn't even count.
Cat was drafted first, but Devin Booker was drafted number 15. Stanley Johnson was drafted before Devin Booker at number 8.
That's not fair, man. Come on, man.
Yeah,
So,
I know.
Come on.
There you go. There you have it. That's my number
Boss.
5.
Hey, for Phoenix, they were happy to get him at that late of a pick.
That is harsh.
So coming in at my number 5 was BYU's 3-point shooter, Jimmer Fredette. I mean, man, he coming in. I mean, that happened with a lot of those 3-point shooters that can knock down from anywhere. They come in with high expectations on them, but I mean, Sacramento. They thought he was just the savior of Sacramento. Like he was going to be the guy that was going to take them to the next level, and he just never turned out to be that guy. I mean, you look at that draft class, and there's you have Kemba, Clay, Kawhi, the Morris twins, Vucevic. They all went after Jimmer, other than Kemba. Kemba went before, but everybody else went after Jimmer Fredette. Those teams could have all been, better teams right now.
Boy, it's funny. You talk about busts in anything NBA related, and I feel like it's almost mandatory to mention the Sacramento Kings. So you just mentioned the Sacramento Kings with Jimmy Fredette. I'm going to mention the Sacramento Kings again when they took Thomas Robinson, 5th out of Kansas. And that was the same year. And it's unfair to pick on another player to compare a bust. but they took Damian Lillard was the number 6 pick that year, and Thomas Robinson was the number 5th pick. Thomas Robinson ended up averaging in his career 4.8 points a game with the Sacramento Kings. I don't know where he went after that. I don't think it matters. I think if your sentence starts with bus and Sacramento Kings, then anything after that is pretty much irrelevant. So I got Thomas Robinson, who people are probably going to have to Google after listening to this, as my number 4 draft bust in the last 10 years. Sacramento.
Shout out to you, Marco. You stole my pick. Good call, by the way. I got the same player, Thomas Robinson, coming to number 4 for me. As you mentioned, he came out of Kansas. He was drafted number 5 in 2012 by the Kings.
That's right.
He was drafted before Damian Lillard. He didn't. Yeah, one spot before Damian Lillard. He didn't even finish his season with the Kings. Come on, it's the Kings, and he didn't finish his season with the Kings. So
I think his season finished when it started, when he got drafted. That was
pretty much.
I hope he got that signing bonus.
I hope so. I doubt it though.
Yeah.
But Thomas Robinson. Go Google him. You probably don't know who he is. He's my number 4 pick as well.
He doesn't know either.
So coming in at my 4, I have to have Ekpe Udo. Yeah, see?
Who?
Nobody knows an Ekpe Udo.
What?
Yeah, you guys, he was drafted before Paul George and Gordon Hayward.
Wow.
Yeah. Ekpe Udo.
By
I
who?
wanted to
Sorry, we're talking NBA, right?
Yeah. He was it was by Golden State Warriors in 2010. Yeah, we're talking on the cusp of 2010 there. He was drafted by the Dink, but man, Paul George, Gordon Hayward were after that. You drafted Ekpe Udo, who averaged 3.5 points per game in his career, and that spanned 384 games. 384 games. So he's my number 4 pick. I wanted to put him higher, but there's some other ones that are just, even worse.
Was this when the Golden State Warriors were trash?
And still, he was not. Yeah.
Like when people forget that Golden State was actually hot garbage, right?
Yeah. He was really, really. They were really, really bad at that point, and they drafted an Ekpe Udo, like I said, and he didn't really do anything. They drafted him from the Baylor Bears. He was the 6th overall pick.
Baylor?
What? Yeah. He played college for both, Michigan and Baylor, and he just never, And then, like I said, he was the 6th overall pick in that draft.
Was Donnie Nelson the coach at the Golden State Warriors at that time?
That
means that this guy must have been a shooter.
I don't know.
Hey,
all I know
Marco,
is
I think Mark is just making this up, eh?
No, I'm not.
I don't know why I'm so upset about it.
You guys go look for it. I'll tell you.
I'm not looking for nothing. No, that's ridiculous.
I knew I was going to say that name, and you guys were going to be like, "Who the hell is that?"
I'm questioning my own basketball knowledge now.
Me too.
Anyway, all right, okay. I'm going to have
move on to number 3.
Number 3 now.
My number 3 is Derek Williams from Arizona. I'm sure you'll remember this name in 2011, drafted by another phenomenal franchise, the Minnesota Timberwolves, number 2 overall. Ended up averaging actually better than your boy, Okpe, whatever his name is, about almost 9 points a game during his short stint in Minnesota. I think it lasted a couple of years or a year at that. And funny note about this is, and I know it's easy to pick on franchises now and scouts 10 years later because, hey, you should have drafted so on and so forth. But that was the same draft year that Kawhi Leonard was picked number 15. Of course, he was drafted by the Pacers and then eventually traded to San Antonio, etc. But it's interesting to know this guy was very highly touted coming out of Arizona. And Arizona had a good program back then, if you followed college basketball. So Yeah, Derek Williams is my number 3 bust of the 2000 and the last 10 years.
So my number 3 bust for NBA drafts 2010 to 2020 is going to be Jerome Robinson. He currently plays for the Wizards, but he was drafted number 13 by the Clippers, coming out of Boston College. He only played like he only played like 10 minutes for the Clippers, I think.
Jesus.
and
He's worse than
his
Ekpe Udo.
career. That was his career with the Clippers. As mentioned, now he's currently playing for. He's still in the league. He's playing for the Wizards, but he's my number 3 bust.
So, okay, we'll go on to my number 3 bust. It's going to come out of the same draft that Jimmer Fredette was in. He was the number 6 pick to the Washington Wizards in the 2011 NBA draft. Jan Vesely. I mean, again, Jan Vesely. Again, you had Kemba, Clay, Kawhi. All those guys went after Jan Vesely. And we know Jan Vesely's now on Fenerbahce and overseas there. And he's not in the NBA, but he's my number 3 pick.
Listen, are we talking about NBA players or talking about what's in the menu on an Italian restaurant?
I'm telling you, man.
Vesely,
Man, I told you, I did my research on this, and I looked as hard as I could at some of these horrible picks. That's why I said it was horrendous. For the last 10 years, there's been some really, really bad picks. And we didn't even get into the 2009s there.
Oh, no.
Yeah, like.
That's a whole different segment.
Exactly.
Ooh, that was bad. Like, this research actually gave me it gave me a headache.
I'm telling you that, yeah. Like, the same thing with me. That's why I was like, yo, like, there's so many names. I had a list of like 30 people that were like, that I could have considered busts. Like Thomas Robinson, Derek Williams, those were all my honorable mentions there. They were still on my list, but these guys just took the cake in terms of being busts.
I feel like we could do like 5 separate top 10s of NBA busts.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and you know what?
From just 2010.
The funny part is a lot of the same franchises come up over and over and over. So sometimes it goes to show you more about the franchise itself than the players, because it's not the players that said, hey, I'm going to go number 2. Sometimes the players are like, why did I even go number 2? Like, I'm not that good.
It's the scouts in the franchise, yeah.
Right? So, and sometimes it's just luck. Honestly, sometimes it's just luck. So my number 2 is your number 5, I believe. Just Jimmer Fredette. That was my number 2 pick. Again, 2011 by Sacramento. Actually, was drafted by the Bucks, traded to Sacramento.
Yes. At the 10th pick, yeah.
And again, you mentioned it, same class as Klay Thompson, which has to hurt. I think you mentioned it as well. 6 points per game in his career and short career. And I remember watching Jimmer Fredette in the NCAA tournament in his stint there in BYU. He actually wasn't that bad. He was really a good player. He can shoot the lights out. Like, I remember watching CBS, watching the tournament and watching games on the weekend, and they would promote the heck out of Jimmer. Like, you thought this guy was coming of the next, I don't know, but things didn't work out for him, not the right fit. Sometimes it's not where you get drafted, sometimes it's what organizations you go to, man. And too bad for this guy. Great. Again, the college game sometimes does not translate into the NBA, and he was another victim of a bust. What was that guy's name? Ekpo what? I'm still on that.
Ekpe Udo. It's spelled.
Shout out to Ekpe Udo.
Right? Like, man, I told you.
Come on our show, man.
I had to go into the vault for that one to find that one.
I think so does he.
Did.
All right.
Sounds like you went to the bottom of the barrel for that one.
I'm telling you.
So did the Bucks.
No,
Golden State.
Golden State, yeah.
Golden State, yeah. But my number 2 pick, and I was considering moving my number 2 up to number 1, but I'm gonna keep him at number 2. It's Anthony Bennett. He went. He was the first Canadian to be drafted number 1 overall. He was number 1 overall in 2013, drafted by the Cavs. He was in the same draft class as C.J. McCollum, Rudy Gobert, Victor Oladipo, Giannis, like Kelly Olynyk. He was in that same draft class. And this guy went on to average 4.4 points per game, 3.1 rebound in his NBA career. I think right now, sad to say, and it's really hard to say this. I hope he's a better player now, but I think he's actually playing for the Canadian national team.
No. There's nothing I can add to that.
As I said, I was considering that my number 1, but I'm gonna stick with my number 1 for now, and I'm going with Anthony Bennett out of University of Nevada for my number 2 bust of NBA draft.
All right. So I'm gonna go with my number 2, and my number 2 is gonna be Dragan Bender.
I knew it.
From Phoenix. Phoenix drafted him 4th overall. Jamal Murray was there. Buddy Hield was there. Even Domantas Sabonis. There was a lot of guys that were in that draft. That that Karis LeVert. There was a lot of guys that were on that thing, even including our Toronto Raptors' very own Pascal Siakam. All those guys were drafted, but after Dragan Bender, who was number 4. I mean, that just goes to show you the inept that Phoenix was dealing with, and why Devin Booker was, and why a lot of people talk about Devin Booker leaving in terms of getting out of there, because they just weren't able to draft solid players in Phoenix, and they wasted draft picks on like a guy like Dragan Bender, who only played 187 games for Phoenix, and now he's out of the league.
It's too bad. It's unfortunate. Yeah. All right.
So drum roll. Who do you got for your number 1 there, Marco?
Well, my number 1 is, shout out to Brampton, but unfortunately I have to call you out. Anthony Bennett, who's your number 2. Out of UNLV. I think, again, great kid. He was. I thought he was actually good in UNLV. I don't think he was great. But something happened in that draft class, that he moved up. And from what I understand and I remember correctly, if I'm not mistaken, the Cleveland Cavaliers actually wanted to trade down. They didn't actually want to draft Anthony Bennett. So it goes to show you exactly what they thought. And they couldn't get a deal done. So they ended up drafting the kid. And unfortunately, his career never got off the ground. Never mind getting off the ground and sort of going, in a cliff dive. It never got off the ground. I think he went back to China, came back here, had a cup of tea with another organization. He is somewhere playing, if he's still playing. And it's too bad, because I know here in Canada, we made a big deal out of him being the first Canadian ever drafted number 1. He's a good kid. He had everything right that you wanted to have in a kid, but coming into the NBA, just wasn't it. And maybe it's unfair to have him number 1, but fact of the matter is, you were number 1, and you didn't even start. He didn't even start. That's the thing, right? So my number 1 is Brampton's own. Shout out to Brampton. Beat out Anthony Bennett.
So for my number 1, I'm gonna go with Markelle Fultz. That's
harsh.
That's my. That's my number 1 NBA draft buzz. This guy, Markelle Fultz, was drafted by the 76ers number 1. He was drafted number 1. He played only 33 games for them. His shooting was just completely off. I really don't know where that guy learned to shoot. He was constantly hurt. It was just a mess for him in Philly. And I have to say, he's back playing ball now. He's playing for the Magic, and it's really good to see him back in playing. Um, I mean, it probably does say something for the Sixers, for their program developing young players, that he was just a bust. But Markel Fultz is my number one NBA draft between 2010 2020. There you go.
Man, the hate, man. The guy's 21 years old. 21 years old. He's not even. He came out of friggin' college, and like now we're like he's a bust because Philly traded him. We know what happened with Jahlil Okafor when they traded him. They traded him, and he fell down the tubes. But I mean, he had 18.9 points his first game. Jahlil Okafor. And I don't really think they gave Markel Fultz a fair shot in Philly. The Philly fans ran him out of that city. They just
And
hated
that
him.
team was not constructed for him.
No.
That team was not well constructed.
Yeah.
Like he came into a situation that was no win. And the way they were already built with the process and Simmons and everybody else, there was no room to develop.
Yeah.
There was not enough minutes to go around. So I'm going to disagree with your number one because this kid's career is still going. And I think that in Orlando, there's going to be a chance for him to be better. Now, we may have this conversation at this point next year, and you're going to say, I told you so, he's a bust. But I think the only reason I'm going to disagree respectfully with your number one pick is because his career is not done yet.
Yeah.
However, I do understand why he would be considered a bust.
Yeah.
I just don't put him in my number one. But hey, we'll see. Hopefully, you know what? Hopefully he turns it around, though, because I mean, his shooting is ugly. Don't get me wrong. I don't know. You're right. I don't know where did he learn how to shoot. But anyways, I'm cutting into Mark's time. But go ahead.
No, it's okay. No, I mean, that's the thing. Like you said, you need specific places or a place where you could grow and mature and get that starting time. You look at Markel Fultz, like he had 14 games starting in his 14 games played in his first season, 19 in his second, 72 this year. He played 72 games this year, and he upped his point total only 4 points, but still, I mean, there is progression there. But I mean, yeah, like you said, we may talk about this a year or 2 years from now. Mark's like, man, I told you guys should have listened to me. He's worse than Anthony Bennett. But
I'm not going to completely blame him, Markel Fultz, as the player. As I mentioned before, he probably shines some light on the Sixers development
for
team.
Sure.
Because I guarantee you, if the Raptors had drafted him, he wouldn't be a bust. So again, as I said, it probably shines some light on their development team. Not going to blame Markel Fultz. As you said, he's a young player, but I mean, he's the most recent. It went down very bad. I'm sticking with him as my number one.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go on to mine here. I'm gonna pick mine, Anthony Bennett as well. I think he's my number one. I mean, you can't talk about worse draft picks than a first overall draft pick who's played 4 seasons in the NBA, was a first overall selection, and didn't have any more than 5 points a game playing on any team. That's just mind-boggling, especially as a Canadian. Like, I mean, and you don't get me wrong, I followed him when he was at UNLV. He was a very good basketball player on their team, but that was a different system than coming into the NBA. And not for anything, they drafted him first overall, before they had any inclination that LeBron James was coming back to Cleveland. And they were, and Cleveland fans were excited about it. And then they got nothing and traded him away to Minnesota to be with Andrew Wiggins. And then he did nothing there. And then he went to Toronto and then did nothing there. And then he went to Brooklyn and did nothing there. And now he's not playing anywhere. But he has to be like on most people's top 5 at least, for sure. I may end up changing mine to Ekpe Udo as the first overall pick. But
Come on, bro.
I was like, yeah, we got to get him on the show.
Yeah, I know. We got to get him on the show. Maybe we'll try for Markel Fultz.
Yeah.
And you can tell him, yeah.
We should. He got to come on and fight his case here.
Exactly.
To at least prove to me that he's better than not being the number one worst NBA bust of all times, or 2010 to 2020.
My thing is, how do we not include Frank Ntilikina?
Woo.
Like, we're talking the same draft as your boy there, Markel Fultz, going to the New York Knicks. Man,
As you said before, top five, it's hard picking a top five.
Well, and that's the thing, like,
so much.
And that's the thing. You look at Frank Ntilikina, like, he's another guy that I was considering putting on there. Donovan Mitchell, Bam Adebayo, those guys all went after him. OG Anunoby, Kyle Kuzma, Tony Bradley. Like, there's a bunch of guys. There's a bunch of guys that went after him too that were just as bad. And New York Knicks fans definitely didn't like that pick, as they haven't liked very many picks. Didn't even like the Porzingis pick, and look how good Porzingis is.
Oops.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
Thank you for listening to our top 5 draft busts from 2010 to 2020. Thanks for joining us this week on the Basketball Lab podcast. Make sure to follow us on our social media. You could follow us on Instagram at @the_basketball_lab, on Twitter at @the_bball_lab. You could also subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Basketball Lab, and you could find us on iTunes and Spotify.